The sound of her own screaming pierced through the Nevada desert air as Sophia Fairmont felt the earth swallow her whole, inch by terrifying inch, the quicksand gripping her body like the cold fingers of death itself. She had been traveling alone across the harsh landscape outside Rhyolite, her horse having bolted after a rattlesnake spooked it an hour earlier, and now here she was, chest deep in this hidden pit of sand and water that refused to let her go, no matter how desperately she struggled. The year was 1906, and this unforgiving land cared nothing for a young woman's dreams of joining her brother, who worked the mines in the boomtown just 5 miles north. Her arms flailed against the surface, trying to find purchase on something solid, but there was nothing except the deceiving crust that had given way beneath her feet. Panic seized her throat as the sand crept higher, pressing against her ribs, making each breath a battle. She had heard stories of prospectors found weeks later, their bodies preserved in these natural graves, their final expressions frozen in terror. Was this how she would end? 22 years old, having fled a suffocating life in Boston, only to die alone in the desert? "Help!" she cried out, though she knew the chances of anyone hearing her were slim. The landscape stretched empty in every direction, nothing but sagebrush and rocky outcroppings under the merciless afternoon sun. Sweat poured down her face, mixing with tears she refused to acknowledge. She had to stay calm. Panic would only make her sink faster. Then, like a mirage shimmering in the heat, she saw him. A figure on horseback cresting the ridge to her left, silhouetted against the blazing sky. Hope surged through her chest so violently it hurt. "Help me!" she screamed, waving her arms. "Please, I am stuck!" The rider's head turned in her direction, and immediately the horse changed course, galloping toward her at full speed. As he drew closer, she could make out more details. A tall man, broad-shouldered, wearing a dusty brown hat and a dark vest over a sweat-stained shirt. His face was shadowed by his hat brim, but she could see the set of his jaw, determined and strong. He pulled his horse to a stop a safe distance from the quicksand pit, his dark eyes assessing the situation with the quick efficiency of someone who had seen trouble before. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. There was something steady about him that cut through her panic like a knife through butter. "Do not move," he called out, his voice deep and calm. "Every movement makes it worse. Can you hear me?" "Yes," Sophia managed, forcing herself to still her thrashing limbs, even though every instinct screamed at her to fight against the sand's embrace. "Good. My name is Yates Anderson. I am going to get you out of there, but you need to trust me and do exactly what I say. Understood?" She nodded, her eyes locked on his face. There was something about the way he looked at her, steady and sure, that made her believe him. Yates swung down from his horse in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the hard ground with purpose. He reached for the lasso coiled at his saddle, his hands working with practiced ease as he shook out the loop. "I am going to throw you this rope. When it comes near, grab it and get it under your arms. Do not pull or yank, just secure it around yourself. Can you do that?" "I think so," Sophia said, though her arms felt heavy and weak from fighting the sand. "You can do this," Yates said, and there was such conviction in his voice that she felt her courage strengthen. "On 3, 1, 2, 3. The rope sailed through the air, the loop spreading wide. It fell short by a few feet, landing on the surface of the quicksand. Sophia's heart sank, but Yates was already pulling it back, coiling it again, with steady hands. "That was just to gauge the distance," he said, though she suspected he was being kind. "This time, I have got it." He spun the lasso above his head, once, twice, and then sent it flying. This time, it arced perfectly, landing over her head and shoulders. Sophia grabbed at it with trembling fingers, working it down under her arms until it rested securely across her back and under her armpits. "That is perfect," Yates called out. "Now hold on tight to the rope, but do not pull yourself. I am going to pull you out, but it has to be slow and steady. If we rush it, the sand will create a suction, and we will be fighting against that. Do you understand?" "Yes," Sophia said, gripping the rough hemp with both hands. Yates walked back to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding that stood patiently waiting. He tied the end of the rope to his saddle horn with quick, efficient movements, then moved to the horse's head, taking the bridle. "Easy now, Buck," he murmured to the animal, nice and slow. He began to lead the horse forward, away from the quicksand pit. The rope went taut, and Sophia felt the pressure around her ribs. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. The sand held her fast, and she felt herself begin to panic again. "Stay calm," Yates called out, as if he could sense her fear from where he stood. "The sand needs time to let go. We are going to go slow." The horse took another step, and another. The pressure increased until Sophia thought her ribs might crack. But then, slowly, agonizingly, she felt herself begin to move. It was not much, just an inch, maybe two, but it was movement. "That is it," Yates encouraged. "You are coming free. Keep holding on." The process was excruciating. Every inch the horse pulled her forward felt like an eternity. The sand sucked at her body, reluctant to release its prize. Sophia focused on breathing, on keeping her grip on the rope, on the sound of Yates's voice as he continued to speak to her, steady and reassuring. "You are doing beautifully," he said. "Just a little more. Can you feel yourself rising?" She could. The terrible pressure on her chest was beginning to ease as more of her body emerged from the sand. Her waist cleared the surface, then her hips. The sand made obscene sucking sounds as it released her. "Almost there," Yates said. "When your legs come free, try not to kick. Let the rope do the work." Sophia nodded, her jaw clenched tight with the effort of staying calm. Her thighs emerged, then her knees. Finally, with a sound like a gasp, the quicksand released her completely, and she found herself being dragged across the hard ground beyond the pit's edge. Yates immediately stopped the horse and ran to her side, dropping to his knees beside her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands hovering over her, as if he wanted to check for injuries, but was not sure if he should touch her. Sophia could not speak. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered, and now that the immediate danger had passed, the full terror of what had almost happened crashed over her like a wave. She had been minutes, perhaps seconds, from drowning in that sand. She would have died alone, and no one would have known where to find her body. "Hey," Yates said gently, and then his hands were on her shoulders, warm and solid and real. "Hey, you are safe now. You are safe." A sob tore from her throat, and then she was crying, great gasping sobs that shook her entire body. Yates did not pull away or tell her to compose herself. Instead, he gathered her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head, and let her weep into his dusty shirt. "It is all right," he murmured. "You are all right now. I have got you." They stayed like that for several minutes, Sophia clinging to this stranger who had saved her life, Yates holding her with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his rough exterior. Finally, when her sobs subsided to hiccups, she pulled back, mortified by her loss of control. "I am sorry," she managed, wiping at her face with shaking hands. She was covered in sand and mud, her traveling dress ruined, her hair hanging in bedraggled strings from its formerly neat bun. "You have nothing to apologize for," Yates said firmly. He reached up and loosened the rope from around her torso, his fingers deft and careful. "That was one of the deepest quicksand pits I have seen in these parts. You were lucky to have lasted as long as you did." "I was lucky you came along," Sophia said, her voice hoarse from screaming and crying. "How did you happen to be riding out here?" "I have a small ranch about 3 miles west of here," Yates explained, sitting back on his heels. "One of my cattle wandered off from the herd, and I was tracking it. Heard your calls and came to investigate." He studied her face, his dark eyes serious. "What were you doing out here alone? This is dangerous country." "My horse spooked," Sophia said, gesturing vaguely in the direction she had been traveling. "A rattlesnake. He bolted, and I have been walking for over an hour trying to get to Rhyolite. My brother works in the mines there. I was supposed to meet him 2 days ago, but the stage from Tonopah broke down, and I have been traveling ever since." Yates frowned. "You have been out here for 2 days?" "The stage dropped us passengers in a small settlement. I managed to rent a horse there yesterday, but as I said, it ran off." She looked down at her ruined dress, at the sand still clinging to every fold of fabric. "I must look like a complete disaster." "You look like someone who survived," Yates said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up at him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Sophia forgot to breathe. He had the most remarkable eyes, deep brown and warm, with little flecks of gold around the pupils. There was kindness in those eyes, and intelligence, and something else she could not quite name. She looked away first, her cheeks heating. "I should try to continue on to Rhyolite, My brother will be worried. Not today, you will not, Yates said firmly. The sun will be setting in a few hours, and you have been through an ordeal. You need rest, water, and food. My ranch is close. You can spend the night there, get cleaned up, and I will take you to Rhyolite in the morning. Sophia hesitated. She did not know this man, and accepting his hospitality could be seen as improper. But what choice did she have? She could barely stand, her legs were shaking so badly, and the thought of walking another 5 miles through this hostile landscape filled her with dread. I do not want to impose, she said weakly. It is not an imposition, Yates assured her. It is common decency. Besides, I would not be able to sleep tonight, knowing I left you out here to fend for yourself after what you just went through. He stood up and offered her his hand. Come on, let us get you home. Sophia took his hand, and he pulled her to her feet with easy strength. Her legs wobbled, and he steadied her with a hand at her elbow. Can you ride? He asked. I think so. We will ride double on Buck. He is strong enough to carry us both. Yates led her to his horse, who stood patiently waiting. He swung up into the saddle first, then reached down for her. Put your foot on my boot, and I will pull you up. It took some maneuvering, and Sophia was painfully aware of how improper this all was, but finally she was settled in front of him, on the saddle, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. She could feel the solid warmth of his chest against her back, could smell the scent of sun-warmed leather, and something else, something masculine and clean that made her pulse quicken. Hold on, Yates said near her ear, and then they were moving, the horse settling into a steady walk across the desert. They rode in silence for a while, Sophia too exhausted to make conversation, and Yates seemingly content to let her rest. She found herself relaxing against him, despite herself, the rhythmic movement of the horse and the security of his arms around her, lulling her into a state somewhere between sleep and waking. There, Yates said after a time, and Sophia opened her eyes to see a small ranch house nestled in a shallow valley ahead. It was a modest structure, built of wood that had been weathered gray by the elements, with a covered porch and a stone chimney. Nearby stood a barn and several corrals, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. It is not much, Yates said, and she could hear a note of something like defensiveness in his voice. But it is mine. It looks wonderful, Sophia said honestly, and felt him relax behind her. As they drew closer, a dog came bounding out from the porch, barking excitedly. It was a medium-sized mutt with floppy ears and a tail that never stopped wagging. That is Rufus, Yates said with evident affection. He is friendly, just excitable. Yates pulled Buck to a stop in front of the house and dismounted, then reached up to help Sophia down. Her legs nearly gave out when her feet touched the ground, and Yates caught her around the waist. Easy, he said. You are more worn out than you realize. Rufus was dancing around them now, trying to sniff at Sophia without jumping on her. She reached down to pat his head, and the dog looked up at her with such adoration that she could not help but smile. Let me get you inside, Yates said. I will unsaddle Buck in a minute. Can you make it up the steps? I think so. He kept a hand at her elbow as they climbed the 3 steps to the porch, and then he was opening the door and ushering her inside. The interior of the house was simple, but clean. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a cast-iron stove in one corner, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, and a pair of comfortable-looking armchairs near a stone fireplace. There were 2 doors leading off the main room, presumably to bedrooms. Sit down, Yates said, guiding her to one of the armchairs. I will get you some water. Sophia sank gratefully into the chair, which was even more comfortable than it looked. She watched as Yates moved around the kitchen with efficient movements, pumping water from a hand pump at the sink and filling a tin cup. He brought it to her, and she drank it down gratefully, the cool liquid soothing her parched throat. Thank you, she said, handing the cup back. Would you like more? Please. He refilled the cup, and she drank more slowly this time, savoring each swallow. Yates perched on the edge of the other armchair, watching her with those steady brown eyes. I should introduce myself properly, Sophia said. My name is Sophia Fairmont. I am from Boston originally. Yates Anderson, he replied, though they had already exchanged names. Born and raised here in Nevada. What brings a Boston lady all the way out to Rhyolite? My brother Samuel. He came out here 3 years ago looking for work and ended up in the mines. He has been writing to me, telling me about this place, and I decided I needed a change. She looked down at the cup in her hands. My father passed away last year, and there was nothing keeping me in Boston anymore. I am sorry about your father, Yates said quietly. Thank you. He was a good man, but he had been sick for a long time. In a way, it was a blessing. She met Yates's eyes. Is it just you here on the ranch? Yes, I bought this land 2 years ago and built the house myself. It has been hard work building up the herd, but I am making progress. He paused, then added, I was married once. She died in childbirth, along with our daughter. That was 4 years ago. Oh, Yates, Sophia breathed, her heart aching for him. I am so sorry. He shrugged, but she could see the pain that still lingered in his eyes. It was a long time ago. I moved out here afterward, needed to start fresh somewhere new. He stood up abruptly. Let me show you where you can wash up. I have some clothes that belong to my wife. They should fit you well enough, and they have to be better than that dress. Sophia looked down at her ruined traveling dress, stiff with drying sand and mud. I could not possibly take your wife's clothes. She would want them to be used, Yates said firmly. No sense in them sitting in a trunk gathering dust when someone needs them. He walked to one of the doors and opened it, revealing a small but tidy bedroom. This was our room. I sleep in the other one now. You can use this tonight. The room contained a double bed with a simple quilt, a dresser, and a washstand with a basin and pitcher. It was spare but comfortable, and Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes again at Yates's generosity. I will get you the clothes and some water to wash with, Yates said. You take your time. I need to tend to Buck and check on the cattle anyway. I will be back in an hour or so to start supper. Thank you, Sophia said, meaning it more deeply than those simple words could convey. You have been so kind to me. Yates looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Any decent person would have done the same, he said finally, but they both knew that was not true. Not everyone would have stopped to help. Not everyone would have opened their home to a stranger. He brought her a pitcher of water, a cake of soap, and a towel, along with a dress of faded blue calico and some undergarments from the trunk at the foot of the bed. Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. Alone for the first time since her ordeal, Sophia stripped off her ruined clothes and began to wash the sand and sweat from her body. The water was cool and refreshing, and she scrubbed at her skin until it was pink and clean. The dress Yates had given her was a little loose in the waist and a bit short in the hem, but it was clean and soft, and she felt almost human again once she had put it on. She tried to do something with her hair, but without a proper brush or mirror, the best she could manage was to re-braid it loosely and let it hang down her back. She would have to ask Yates if he had a brush she could borrow. The room was warm from the afternoon heat, and Sophia found herself drawn to the window. It looked out over the valley, and she could see Yates in the distance, checking on his cattle. Even from here, she could see the easy confidence in the way he moved, the sureness of someone who knew this land and respected it. She thought about what he had told her, about his wife and child. 4 years was not such a long time to grieve such a devastating loss. Yet here he was, building a new life for himself, working this harsh land alone. There was something admirable about that, something strong. Sophia realized with a start that she was staring and turned away from the window, her cheeks heating. What was wrong with her? She had known this man for less than 2 hours, and here she was, mooning over him like some silly schoolgirl. He had saved her life and offered her shelter. That was all. She should not read anything more into his kindness. She spent the next half hour resting on the bed, her body finally relaxing now that she was clean and safe. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, there was a gentle knock at the door. Miss Fairmont? Yates's voice called. I am starting supper if you would like to join me. Sophia stood up quickly, smoothing down the borrowed dress. I will be right there. She opened the door to find Yates had cleaned up as well. He had washed his face and changed into a clean shirt, though he still wore the same dusty pants and boots. His dark hair was damp and curling even more than before. Did you rest? He asked. I did, thank you. I did not realize how tired I was. Near-death experiences will do that to you, Yates said, with a slight smile that made his whole face transform. He looked younger when he smiled, and even more handsome, though Sophia tried not to notice. She followed him to the kitchen area, where he had clearly been busy. There was a pot of something simmering on the stove, and he had set the table with 2 plates and utensils. I hope you like stew, he said. It is about the only thing I know how to make that is worth eating. It smells wonderful, Sophia said honestly. The rich scent of beef and vegetables was making her mouth water, and she realized she had not eaten since early that morning. Yates ladled stew into bowls and brought them to the table, along with a plate of bread that looked store-bought. They sat down across from each other, and for a moment there was an awkward silence. "Should we say grace?" Sophia asked. "If you would like." She bowed her head and said a simple blessing, thanking God for her deliverance and for Yates's kindness. When she looked up, Yates was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. The stew was delicious, hearty, and filling, and Sophia ate with an appetite she had not had in days. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Yates spoke. "Tell me about Boston," he said. "What was your life like there?" Sophia thought about how to answer. "Suffocating," she said finally. "My father was a banker, and we lived a very proper, very constrained life. Everything was about appearances and social standing. After he died, I realized I did not want to live like that anymore. My brother's letters made the West sound so different, so free. I wanted to experience that for myself." "And what will you do in Rhyolite?" Yates asked. "Do you have plans?" "I am hoping to find work," Sophia admitted. "I can read and write and do figures. Perhaps I can find a position as a clerk or a bookkeeper. Samuel says the town is growing fast. There must be opportunities." Yates nodded slowly. "Rhyolite is booming right now, that is true, but it is also a rough town. Lots of prospectors and miners, not much in the way of law and order. It is not always safe for a woman alone. I will be with my brother," Sophia pointed out, "and I am not some delicate flower, despite appearances. I can take care of myself." "I saw that today," Yates said with a hint of teasing in his voice. "You handled that quicksand very well." Sophia felt herself blush and could not help but laugh. "That is not fair. No one handles quicksand well." "True enough." Yates's smile faded, and he looked serious again. "I am glad I found you when I did. If I had been even a few minutes later—" "But you were not," Sophia interrupted, not wanting to think about what might have happened. "You saved my life, Yates. I can never repay you for that." "I do not want repayment," he said firmly. "I just want to know you are safe." There was something in his voice, in the way he was looking at her, that made Sophia's breath catch. She could not look away from his eyes, and for a moment, the air between them seemed charged with something electric. Rufus chose that moment to push his nose against Yates's leg, whining for scraps, and the moment broke. Yates laughed and reached down to scratch the dog's ears. "Greedy beast," he said affectionately. "You already had your dinner." They finished their meal with lighter conversation, Yates telling her about his ranch and the challenges of raising cattle in the Nevada desert. Sophia found herself genuinely interested, asking questions about water rights and grazing land and market prices. Yates seemed surprised and pleased by her interest, and his answers became more animated. After dinner, Sophia insisted on helping wash the dishes, despite Yates's protests. They worked side by side at the sink, and Sophia was acutely aware of his presence beside her, of the way their arms occasionally brushed as they worked. "You must think I am terribly improper," she said as she dried the last plate. "Staying here alone with you? I think you are a woman who found herself in a difficult situation and made the best choice available to her," Yates said. He took the plate from her and put it away in the cupboard. "Anyone who would judge you for that is not worth knowing." "You are very kind," Sophia said softly. "I am honest," Yates corrected. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Sophia, I want you to know that you are safe here. I would never take advantage of your situation or expect anything from you in return for my help." "I know that," Sophia said, and she realized it was true. She had only known this man for a few hours, but she trusted him completely. There was an inherent goodness to Yates Anderson that shone through everything he did. As the evening wore on, they sat in the armchairs and talked, the conversation flowing easily between them. Yates told her about growing up in Nevada, about his parents who had run a trading post in Carson City, about his dreams of building his ranch into something substantial. Sophia told him about her childhood in Boston, about her love of reading, about her mother who had died when she was 12. "I always felt like I was waiting for my real life to begin," she admitted. "Like everything in Boston was just a prelude to something more important. Does that make any sense?" "Perfect sense," Yates said. "I felt the same way after Ellen died. Like I was just going through the motions of living without actually being alive. Moving out here, building this place, it gave me purpose again." "Do you ever get lonely?" Sophia asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "I am sorry. That was too forward." "No, it is all right." Yates was quiet for a moment, staring into the empty fireplace. "Yes, I get lonely. There are days when I do not see another soul, when the only voices I hear are my own and Rufus's barking. But it is better than being surrounded by people and still feeling alone, which is how I felt after Ellen died." Sophia understood exactly what he meant. She had felt that way in Boston, surrounded by her father's friends and the society people who came to call, but feeling utterly isolated in her grief. "I think you are very brave," she said. "Building a life out here all alone, it takes courage." "Or stubbornness," Yates said with a wry smile. "My father always said I was too stubborn for my own good." "I would say determined," Sophia countered. "There is a difference." They smiled at each other, and Sophia felt that strange electricity again, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the heat of the evening. Finally, as the light faded completely outside and the room grew dim, Yates stood up and lit a lamp. "You must be exhausted," he said. "You should get some sleep. We will leave for Rhyolite at first light." Sophia stood as well, suddenly reluctant for the evening to end. "Thank you again, Yates, for everything." "You are welcome." He walked her to the bedroom door, Rufus trailing behind them. "If you need anything during the night, just call out. I am a light sleeper." "I will be fine," Sophia assured him. "Good night." "Good night, Sophia." She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. What was happening to her? She could not possibly be developing feelings for Yates. She had just met him. This was gratitude, nothing more. He had saved her life, and she was confusing that with something deeper. But as she climbed into the bed and pulled the quilt up to her chin, she could not stop thinking about the way he had held her while she cried, the gentleness in his touch, the kindness in his eyes. She fell asleep with his name on her lips. Sophia woke to the sound of someone moving around in the kitchen. For a moment she was disoriented, not sure where she was. But then the memories of the previous day came flooding back. The quicksand, Yates, his offer of shelter. She sat up quickly and looked out the window to see the sky just beginning to lighten with the approaching dawn. She dressed quickly in the borrowed dress and braided her hair as best she could, then opened the door to find Yates already at the stove, making breakfast. He turned when he heard the door and gave her a warm smile that made her stomach flutter. "Good morning," he said. "I hope I did not wake you." "No, I was already stirring. Is there anything I can help with?" "Just about done. Coffee is ready if you want some." Sophia poured herself a cup of the strong, hot coffee and wrapped her hands around the mug, savoring the warmth. Yates served up plates of fried eggs and bacon, with more of the bread from last night. "You did not have to go to all this trouble," Sophia said as they sat down to eat. "It is no trouble. Besides, it is a long ride to Rhyolite. We need a good breakfast." They ate quickly, and soon Yates was leading her outside to where Buck was already saddled and ready to go. The morning air was cool and fresh, a welcome change from yesterday's heat. "Ready?" Yates asked as he helped her mount. "As ready as I will ever be," Sophia said. They rode out as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and pink. Sophia sat in front of Yates again, acutely aware of his presence behind her. The ride was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. As they crested a ridge, Rhyolite came into view in the valley below. It was larger than Sophia had expected, a sprawling collection of buildings and tents, with the tall structures of mine head frames visible in the distance. Even from here, she could see people moving about, could hear the faint sounds of activity. "There it is," Yates said, "your new home." Something in his voice made Sophia's chest tighten. She realized suddenly that she did not want this ride to end, did not want to say goodbye to Yates. In the short time she had known him, he had become important to her in a way she could not fully explain. They rode down into the town, drawing curious looks from the people they passed. Yates guided Buck through the dusty streets, past saloons and shops, and the impressive bulk of the 3-story Cook Bank building. "Do you know where your brother is staying?" Yates asked. "He said he had a room at the Silver Palace boarding house." Yates nodded and turned Buck down a side street. The Silver Palace was a 2-story wooden building that had seen better days, but it looked clean enough. Yates dismounted and helped Sophia down, and they stood awkwardly facing each other on the wooden sidewalk. "I suppose this is goodbye," Sophia said, hating how her voice wavered. "I suppose it is," Yates agreed, but he made no move to leave. "Will you be all right?" "I will be fine. My brother is here, and I will find work. I will be fine," she repeated, as if trying to convince herself. "Sophia?" Yates said, and then stopped, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say. "If you ever need anything, my ranch is not far. You can always come to me." "Thank you," she whispered. On impulse, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Thank you for saving my life." Yates's hand came up to touch the spot where she had kissed him, his eyes wide with surprise. Before either of them could say anything more, the door to the boarding house flew open and a young man came rushing out. "Sophia!" he exclaimed. "Is that really you?" Samuel Fairmont was 25, with the same light brown hair and blue eyes as his sister. He was thinner than Sophia remembered, his face tanned and weathered by the sun, but his smile was just as bright. "Samuel!" Sophia turned to embrace her brother, who caught her up in a bear hug and swung her around. "I was so worried when you did not arrive on schedule," Samuel said, setting her down and holding her at arm's length to look at her. "The stage company said there was a breakdown, but I had no idea where you were. Are you all right? Where are your things?" "It is a long story," Sophia said. "Samuel, this is Yates Anderson. He saved my life yesterday." Samuel turned to Yates, his expression turning serious. "What happened?" Yates gave him a brief account of finding Sophia in the quicksand and taking her to his ranch. Samuel's face went pale as he listened. "Good God, Sophia, you could have died." He turned to Yates and extended his hand. "I cannot thank you enough for helping my sister. I am in your debt." "No debt," Yates said, shaking Samuel's hand. "I am just glad I was there." "At least let me pay you for your trouble," Samuel began, but Yates held up a hand. "I do not want payment. Just take good care of your sister." "I will," Samuel promised. "Come inside, both of you. Let me at least offer you some breakfast or a drink." "I already ate, and I need to get back to my ranch," Yates said. He looked at Sophia, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "Take care of yourself, Sophia." "You too, Yates." He tipped his hat to them both, then swung back up onto Buck. Sophia watched as he rode away, her chest aching with a sense of loss that seemed out of all proportion to the brief time they had known each other. "Come on," Samuel said, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Let us get you settled. You look exhausted." Sophia let her brother lead her inside, but she could not help glancing back one more time. Yates was already out of sight, swallowed up by the bustle of the growing town. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Samuel's room at the boarding house was small, barely large enough for one person, let alone two, so he paid for a second room for Sophia down the hall. It was tiny, containing only a narrow bed and a washstand, but it was hers, and Sophia was grateful for it. Samuel worked long hours at the mine, leaving before dawn and not returning until well after dark. On his day off, he took Sophia around Rhyolite, showing her the town that had exploded into existence in just the past 2 years. There were stores and restaurants, a schoolhouse, and a train depot. The streets were crowded with miners and prospectors, businessmen and gamblers, and yes, a few women, though not many. "It is growing so fast," Samuel told her as they walked down the main street. 2 years ago, there was nothing here but desert and a few mining claims. Now look at it. We have electric lights, telephones, running water in some buildings. They are even building an opera house." Sophia could see the excitement in her brother's eyes, the way he had embraced this new, rough world. It was so different from the Samuel she had known in Boston, who had been quiet and studious, always with his nose in a book. "You love it here," she observed. "I do," Samuel admitted. "It is hard work, dangerous sometimes. But I feel alive here in a way I never did back east. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Sophia said, thinking of what Yates had said about finding purpose. She found work within a week as a bookkeeper for a mining supply company. The owner, a gruff but fair man named Mr. Jenkins, was impressed by her neat handwriting and quick head for figures. The pay was modest, but enough for her to afford her room at the boarding house and still have a little left over. Life fell into a routine. Sophia worked 6 days a week, keeping the accounts and managing correspondence for Mr. Jenkins. In the evenings, she and Samuel would sometimes have dinner together, though more often he was too tired from his shift at the mine. On Sundays, she would walk around the town, watching Rhyolite grow and change almost by the day. But no matter how busy she kept herself, Sophia could not stop thinking about Yates. At odd moments during the day, she would find herself remembering the way he had looked at her, the gentleness of his touch, the sound of his voice. She told herself she was being foolish, that what she was feeling was just gratitude mixed with loneliness in this strange new place. 3 weeks after arriving in Rhyolite, Sophia was walking back to the boarding house after work when she saw him. Yates was tying Buck to a hitching post in front of the general store, and Sophia's heart leaped into her throat. She had not realized how much she had been hoping to see him again until this moment. "Yates!" she called out before she could stop herself. He turned and his face lit up with a smile that made her knees weak. "Sophia, what a pleasant surprise." She hurried over to him, suddenly feeling shy. "What brings you to town?" "I needed supplies, and I had to see the banker about a loan for more cattle." He looked her over, his gaze warm. "You look well. How have you been?" "Good. I found work as a bookkeeper, and I have my own room at the boarding house. Samuel has been wonderful, showing me around and making sure I am settled." "I am glad to hear it." Yates paused, seeming to gather his courage. "Would you like to join me for dinner? I was planning to eat at the hotel restaurant before heading back." Sophia knew she should say no. She should maintain proper distance, not encourage whatever was developing between them, but the words that came out of her mouth were, "I would love to." They walked together to the Rhyolite Hotel, the finest establishment in town. The restaurant was crowded with miners and businessmen, but the hostess found them a table in the corner. Sophia was aware of the curious looks they were getting, a respectable woman dining alone with a cowboy. But she found she did not care. Over plates of roast beef and potatoes, they caught up on the past 3 weeks. Yates told her about his ranch, about a new calf that had been born, about his plans to expand his herd. Sophia told him about her work, about the characters she met at the supply company, about the rapid growth of Rhyolite. "It sounds like you are thriving here," Yates said, and she could hear genuine pleasure in his voice. "I am," Sophia agreed. "It is so different from Boston. I feel like I can breathe here." "I am glad." Yates set down his fork and looked at her seriously. "Sophia, I have to admit something. I did not come to town just for supplies. I was hoping I might see you." Sophia's heart began to pound. "You were?" "I have not been able to stop thinking about you since that day," Yates continued. "I know we have only known each other a short time, and I have no right to feel this way, but I cannot help it. You have been on my mind constantly." "Oh, Yates," Sophia breathed. "I have been thinking about you too, every day." The relief on his face was palpable. "You have?" "Yes. I tried to tell myself it was just gratitude, but it is more than that. So much more." Yates reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "I would like to court you properly, if you will allow it. I know I am just a rancher with not much to offer, but I care about you, Sophia, more than I thought I could care about anyone again." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes, but they were happy tears. "You have plenty to offer, Yates Anderson, and yes, I would very much like you to court me." His smile was brilliant, transforming his whole face. "Really? Really?" They finished their dinner in a glow of happiness, making plans for Yates to come to town the following Sunday to take her on a proper outing. When he walked her back to the boarding house, he kissed her hand at the door, his lips warm against her skin. "Until Sunday," he said. "Until Sunday," Sophia echoed. She watched him walk away, her hand tingling where he had kissed it, and felt like her heart might burst with joy. This was what she had been waiting for, this feeling of rightness, of coming home to someone who understood her. Samuel was waiting for her in the hallway, and from the knowing smile on his face, Sophia knew he had seen them together. "So," he said, "the rancher who saved you from the quicksand, he seems like a good man." "He is," Sophia said firmly, "a very good man." "I am glad," Samuel said, and hugged her. "You deserve happiness, Sophie. You deserve someone who looks at you the way he does." "How does he look at me?" Sophia asked, though she thought she knew. "Like you are the most precious thing in the world," Samuel said simply. Over the next several months, Yates courted Sophia with a quiet determination that touched her deeply. Every Sunday, he would ride into town, and they would spend the day together. Sometimes they would go on picnics outside of town, spreading a blanket in the shade of a Joshua tree and talking for hours. Other times they would simply walk through Rhyolite, Yates's hand warm and solid in hers. He showed her the desert in a way she had never seen it before, teaching her the names of the plants and animals, showing her hidden springs and spectacular rock formations. The land that had seemed so hostile and barren when she first arrived began to reveal its harsh beauty under Yates's patient guidance. "You love this place," Sophia observed one afternoon as they sat on a ridge overlooking his ranch. "I do," Yates agreed. "I know it seems inhospitable, but there is a beauty to it once you learn to see it, and a freedom too. Out here, a man can be whoever he wants to be, build whatever life he wants. The past does not matter as much as what you do with the future." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling utterly content. "I am beginning to see what you mean." As winter approached, bringing cooler temperatures but rarely snow to the low desert elevations, their relationship deepened. Yates began to talk about his dreams for the future, about expanding his ranch, about breeding better quality cattle, and slowly, tentatively, those dreams began to include Sophia. "I want to build a bigger house," he told her one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. "The one I have now is too small. I want something with a proper kitchen and maybe a parlor, a family house." "That sounds lovely," Sophia said, her heart beating faster. "Sophia." Yates turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I know I should wait longer, that we have only been courting for 4 months, but I cannot help myself. I love you. I think I have loved you since the moment I pulled you out of that quicksand pit, and you looked at me with those beautiful blue eyes." "Yates," Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," he continued. "I want to build that house with you, fill it with children and laughter. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. Will you marry me, Sophia? Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Sophia said through her tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I love you too, Yates. I have loved you almost from the beginning." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, a deep, passionate kiss that left her breathless and dizzy. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling so hard their faces hurt. "I do not have a ring yet," Yates admitted. "I wanted to ask you first, make sure you would say yes before I spent the money." "I do not need a ring," Sophia assured him. "All I need is you." But 2 weeks later, Yates presented her with a simple gold band set with a small diamond. It was not fancy or expensive, but to Sophia, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. They were married in February of 1907, in a small ceremony at the church in Rhyolite. Samuel stood up as best man, and Mrs. Jenkins, the wife of Sophia's employer, served as her attendant. It was a simple affair, but Sophia had never been happier. After the ceremony, Yates took his bride home to the ranch. He had been working hard over the past months, adding on to the house just as he had promised. There was now a larger bedroom, a real kitchen with a new stove, and even a small parlor with a sofa and chairs. "It is not finished yet," Yates said as he carried her over the threshold, "but it is a start." "It is perfect," Sophia said, looking around at their home with shining eyes. "Absolutely perfect." That night, as they lay in each other's arms in the darkness, Sophia thought about the strange path that had led her to this moment. If her horse had not bolted, if she had not stumbled into that quicksand pit, if Yates had not happened to be riding by at exactly that moment, she never would have met the man who was now her husband. It seemed like fate, like all of it had been meant to happen just the way it did. "What are you thinking about?" Yates murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "About how lucky I am," Sophia said. "About how a terrible thing led to the most wonderful thing." "I was thinking the same thing," Yates admitted. "I never thought I could feel this way again after Ellen. I thought that part of my life was over. But then I found you, and everything changed." "We found each other," Sophia corrected softly. "We found each other," Yates agreed, and kissed the top of her head. Life as a rancher's wife was harder than Sophia had anticipated, but she embraced it wholeheartedly. She learned to cook over the wood stove, to tend a vegetable garden in the harsh soil, to help Yates with the cattle when needed. Her hands, which had once been soft and pale, became rough and tanned from work. Samuel visited often, and Sophia could see that he approved of her marriage and her new life. "You seem happy," he told her one Sunday afternoon, as they sat on the porch while Yates worked in the barn. "Truly happy." "I am," Sophia said simply. happier than I ever thought possible. That summer, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not wanted to say anything until she was certain. When she finally told Yates, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to have a baby." "We are," Sophia confirmed, laughing at his excitement. "I am about 3 months along, I think. The baby should come in February." Yates immediately became protective, insisting that Sophia rest more and not work too hard. She indulged him, understanding that this pregnancy was bringing up memories of his first wife and the tragedy that had taken her and their daughter. She made sure to reassure him constantly that she was healthy and strong. As her belly grew round with their child, Yates would spend long evenings with his hand on her stomach, talking to the baby about the ranch and the cattle and all the things they would do together. Sophia would watch him with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by love for this gentle, caring man. In late February of 1908, their son was born. It was a difficult labor that lasted nearly a full day, and Sophia could see the fear in Yates's eyes as he waited. But finally, the midwife they had brought from Rhyolite placed a squalling, red-faced baby boy in Sophia's arms. "He is perfect," Sophia whispered, examining every tiny finger and toe. "He is," Yates agreed, his voice rough with emotion. He kissed Sophia's forehead. "You are both perfect. Thank you for giving me this." They named him Thomas, after Yates's father. Tommy, as they quickly began to call him, was a healthy, happy baby who rarely cried and seemed to love being outdoors from his earliest days. Yates was a devoted father, taking Tommy with him on his rounds of the ranch as soon as the baby was old enough, carrying him in a sling across his chest. 2 years later, their daughter was born, a beautiful girl they named Emma. She had Sophia's blue eyes and Yates's dark hair, and from the moment she drew breath, she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny finger. Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew, learning to walk and talk and help with small chores. Tommy showed signs of being a natural rancher like his father, while Emma was more bookish, content to sit with Sophia and look at picture books for hours. Samuel remained a frequent visitor, though he eventually left the mines to open a hardware store in Rhyolite. He married a woman named Clara, a teacher who had come west looking for adventure, and they had 2 children of their own. The families would gather for holidays and special occasions, filling the house with noise and laughter. Rhyolite continued to boom for a few years, but by 1910, the mines were beginning to play out. People started to leave, moving on to the next boom town, the next promise of wealth. Samuel and Clara decided to stay, believing that Rhyolite would survive as a smaller but stable community. But Yates and Sophia were content on their ranch, far enough from town that the booms and busts did not affect them much. They had built a good life for themselves, one based on hard work and the land rather than the vagaries of mining luck. In 1912, when Tommy was 4 and Emma was 2, Sophia found herself pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to twins, 2 healthy boys they named James and William. The house, which had seemed spacious when it was just the 2 of them, suddenly felt cramped with 4 children, so Yates began work on another addition. "At this rate, we are going to have the biggest house in Nevada," he joked one evening, as he drew up plans for more bedrooms. "You say that like it is a bad thing," Sophia teased, cradling baby William, while Tommy and Emma played on the floor and James slept in his cradle. Yates looked around at his family, at the home they had built together, and smiled. "Not bad at all. Perfect, actually." Life was not without its challenges. There were years when the cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were droughts that made water scarce and winters that were unexpectedly harsh. But through it all, Yates and Sophia faced each challenge together, their love for each other growing stronger with each passing year. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yates took Sophia back to the place where he had first found her, where the quicksand had nearly claimed her life. The pit had long since dried up and filled in, just another patch of desert now, but they both knew the spot. "I think about that day often," Yates said, as they stood hand in hand, looking out over the landscape. "About how close I came to not finding you. If I had gone a different direction looking for that lost cow, if I had been 5 minutes later, if you had not called out when you did. But none of those things happened," Sophia said, squeezing his hand. "You did find me, you saved me, and look at what we have built together." "I did not just save your life that day," Yates said quietly. "You saved mine too. I was just existing before I met you, going through the motions. You made me want to truly live again." Sophia turned to face him, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "We saved each other then, and I would do it all again, every moment, even the scary ones, because they led me to you." They kissed there in the desert, the sun warm on their faces, the wind carrying the scent of sage and creosote. It was a perfect moment, a culmination of 10 years of love and partnership and building a life together. As the children grew older, they each developed their own personalities and dreams. Tommy, true to his early promise, became Yates's right hand on the ranch, learning everything his father could teach him about raising cattle and managing the land. Emma discovered a love of music and convinced her parents to buy her a piano, which she practiced diligently every evening. The twins, James and William, were inseparable and constantly getting into mischief, keeping Sophia on her toes. In 1920, when Tommy was 12 and talking seriously about taking over the ranch someday, Sophia gave birth to their 5th child, another daughter they named Rose. She would be their last, and they doted on her accordingly, all of the older children taking turns helping to care for their baby sister. By 1925, Rhyolite had become a ghost town, most of its buildings abandoned as people moved on to other opportunities. Samuel and Clara had eventually relocated to Tonopah, where Samuel opened another hardware store. But Yates and Sophia remained on their ranch, watching their children grow and their cattle herd thrive. Tommy was 17 now, strong and capable, already doing a man's work on the ranch. Emma was 15, beautiful and talented, with several young men from neighboring ranches paying her court, much to Yates's consternation. The twins were 13 and still inseparable, and little Rose was 5, precocious and adored by everyone. One evening, after the children had all gone to bed, Sophia and Yates sat on their porch, watching the stars come out. It was something they had done countless times over the years, but it never got old. "Do you ever miss Boston?" Yates asked. "Never," Sophia said without hesitation. "Everything I want and need is right here." Even after everything, the hard years, the struggles, especially because of those things, Sophia said. They made us stronger. They proved that we could weather anything together. Yates put his arm around her and she snuggled against him, just as comfortable with this gesture after 18 years as she had been on their wedding night. "I love you, Sophia Anderson," Yates said. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "I love you too," Sophia replied. "Thank you for throwing that rope." Yates laughed, understanding immediately what she meant. "Thank you for grabbing hold of it." As they sat there in the comfortable silence of long companionship, Sophia reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come west looking for freedom and a fresh start, and she had found so much more than that. She had found a partner, a home, a family, and a love that had exceeded her wildest dreams. The years continued to pass, marked by the steady rhythm of ranch life. Tommy took on more responsibility, eventually becoming a full partner in running the ranch. He married a sweet girl named Margaret from a neighboring property, and they built a small house on the edge of Yates and Sophia's land. Soon they had children of their own, making Yates and Sophia grandparents. Emma married a musician from Las Vegas who treated her like a queen and supported her own musical ambitions. The twins both left home after finishing school, James to become a veterinarian, and William to try his luck as a pilot, fascinated by the new aviation technology. Rose, their baby, grew into a spirited young woman who declared she wanted to be a teacher like her Aunt Clara. Through it all, Yates and Sophia remained the steady center of their family, the foundation upon which everything else was built. They grew older together gracefully, silver threading through their hair, lines deepening around their eyes from years of squinting against the desert sun and laughing together. In 1935, on their 28th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was full of noise and love, children running everywhere, the women cooking up a feast in the kitchen, while the men gathered on the porch to talk about cattle and weather and politics. After dinner, Samuel, now in his mid-50s and gray at the temples, stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank my sister and her husband for bringing us all together like this. 28 years ago, Sophia came west looking for a new life, and she found the best one any of us could have imagined. She found a man who saved her in more ways than one, who built a life with her that has become the cornerstone of this entire family. To Yates and Sophia." "To Yates and Sophia," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Later that night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Yates and Sophia once again found themselves on the porch, watching the stars. "I cannot believe it has been 28 years, Sophia said. "It feels like yesterday that you pulled me out of that quicksand. And yet it also feels like I have known you forever," Yates added, "like we were always meant to find each other." "We were," Sophia said with certainty. "Everything happened exactly as it was supposed to." She thought about the terrified young woman she had been, sinking into that sand, convinced she was going to die. She could never have imagined then that her rescue would lead to this. A lifetime of love, a family, a home carved out of the harsh Nevada desert through hard work and determination and devotion. "I do not regret a single day," she said softly. "Not the hard ones, not the scary ones, not even that day in the quicksand, because it all brought me here, to this life with you." "No regrets," Yates agreed, pulling her close. "Only gratitude for every single moment." They sat there until late into the night, talking and reminiscing, laughing over old memories and marveling at how blessed they had been. When they finally went inside to bed, they walked hand in hand, just as they had done every night for 28 years. The ranch continued to thrive under the joint management of Yates and Tommy. They weathered the Depression years better than many, their diverse operation and careful management seeing them through when other ranches failed. Yates taught his son everything he knew, preparing him for the day when he would take over completely. In 1942, when America entered World War II, William enlisted as a pilot, putting his flying skills to use for his country. James, as a veterinarian, was considered essential on the home front, but he did his part by volunteering at a military hospital in his spare time. Emma's husband was too old for service, but they both worked tirelessly with the USO, entertaining troops. It was a hard time, full of worry and fear, but the family came together to support each other. Sophia and Emma organized knitting circles to make socks and blankets for soldiers. Yates and Tommy increased their cattle production to help feed the troops. Rose, now a teacher as she had dreamed, volunteered to teach reading to soldiers at a nearby base. When William came home in 1945, safe and sound, though changed by what he had seen, the whole family gathered to celebrate. It was one of those perfect moments that Sophia tucked away in her heart, seeing all of her children and grandchildren together, healthy and whole. As they moved into the 1950s, Yates and Sophia finally began to slow down, leaving more and more of the ranch work to Tommy and his children. They spent their days in quieter pursuits now, Sophia reading on the porch while Yates whittled or worked on small projects. They took long walks in the cool of the evening, reminiscing about all the years behind them. "We have had a good run," Yates said one evening, as they walked slowly back to the house, his arms supporting Sophia's as they navigated the uneven ground. "We are not done yet," Sophia protested, though she knew what he meant. They were in their 70s now, and they could both feel the weight of the years. "No, not done," Yates agreed, "but we are in the home stretch, you and I." It was not a morbid thought, just a realistic one. They had lived full lives, raised a family, built something lasting. Whatever time they had left, they would spend it together, just as they had spent every day since that fateful afternoon when he had pulled her from the quicksand. In 1956, Yates and Sophia celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. It was a grand affair, with family coming from all over the country to celebrate. There were over 30 grandchildren now, and even a few great-grandchildren toddling about. The ranch house, expanded several times over the years, was bursting at the seams with family. During the celebration, their children presented them with a portrait that had been commissioned, showing Yates and Sophia as they were now, silver-haired and lined but still clearly in love, standing in front of the ranch house they had built together. "Thank you all for being here," Sophia said, her voice wavering with emotion as she looked around at the sea of beloved faces. 50 years ago, I married the man who saved my life, and he has been saving it every day since by filling it with so much love and joy. I could not have asked for a better partner, a better life, or a better family." There was not a dry eye in the house as Yates pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "You saved me right back," he murmured, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Every single day, you saved me right back." They danced that night, moving slowly to music from Emma's piano, their steps sure despite their age because they knew each other so well. They had been dancing together for 50 years, after all, sometimes to actual music, but more often to the rhythm of shared work, shared dreams, and shared love. As the years rolled on, Sophia and Yates became the beloved patriarch and matriarch of a sprawling family. They were there for every birth, every wedding, every milestone, offering wisdom and support and unconditional love. The ranch house became a place where everyone gathered for holidays, where grandchildren learned to ride horses and great-grandchildren took their first steps. In the summer of 1962, Yates fell ill. It started as a cough that would not go away, and soon he was too weak to do more than sit on the porch. Sophia stayed by his side constantly, just as she had for 55 years. "I am not afraid," Yates told her one evening, as the sun set over the land he loved. "I have lived a full life, loved deeply, seen my children and grandchildren thrive. I have no regrets." "Do not talk like that," Sophia said, though her voice broke. "You are going to be fine." "Sophia," Yates said gently, taking her hand. "We both know that is not true, and it is all right. I am ready." "I am not," Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I am not ready to let you go. I know, my love, but you are stronger than you think. You have always been the strong one." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Promise me something. Promise me you will keep living, keep finding joy in every day. Do not shut yourself away in grief. You have too much light to share with this family." "I promise," Sophia managed through her tears. "But only if you promise to wait for me, wherever you are going. I will find you again." "I will wait," Yates promised. "I will wait forever if I have to." 2 days later, surrounded by his family, Yates Anderson passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 74 years old and had lived to see his ranch prosper, his children thrive, and his legacy secured through generations. Sophia was devastated by his loss, but she kept her promise. She did not shut herself away in grief. Instead, she threw herself into her family, being there for her children and grandchildren, sharing stories about Yates and keeping his memory alive. She stayed on the ranch, in the house they had built together, surrounded by the life they had created. She lived for another 12 years, passing away peacefully at the age of 84. Until the very end, she wore the simple gold band Yates had given her, and she spoke of him often, always with love and never with sadness. When she died, her last words were, "I am coming, Yates. I hope you are ready." They buried her next to him on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky so big and blue it seemed to stretch into eternity. The whole family gathered, now numbering over 100 people, all of them there, because two people had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built something beautiful together. Tommy, now in his 60s and running the ranch with his own sons, gave the eulogy. "My parents taught us that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice you make every single day," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "They chose each other every day for 55 years, through good times and hard times, through joy and sorrow. They built this ranch, this family, this legacy, not just with their hands, but with their love for each other. We are all here because of that love, and we carry it forward into the future." Years later, the story of how Yates saved Sophia from the quicksand would become family legend, told and retold to each new generation. But those who knew them understood that the real story was not about that one dramatic rescue. It was about the thousands of small moments that followed, the quiet devotion, the shared work, the laughter and tears, and everything in between. It was about two people who found each other against all odds and spent a lifetime proving that love, real love, could conquer anything. The ranch still stands today, now run by the fourth generation of Andersons. The house has been expanded and modernized, but the original structure that Yates built with his own hands is still there, preserved as a reminder of where it all began. On that hill overlooking the ranch, two headstones stand side by side, their inscriptions simple but profound. Yates Anderson, 1882-1962. He threw the rope. Sophia Anderson, 1884-1974. She held on tight, and beneath both inscriptions, the same words: "Together forever." It was a story of survival and salvation, but more than that, it was a story of love, real, deep, abiding love that lasted through decades and beyond death itself. It was proof that sometimes the most terrifying moments of our lives can lead to the most beautiful ones, that being saved is sometimes the first step towards saving yourself, and that true love, once found, never really ends. In the end, That was the legacy Yates and Sophia left behind. Not just the ranch or the family or the life they built together, but the example they set of what love could be when two people were brave enough to grab hold of it and never let go. And in every generation that followed, whenever a young couple stood at the altar or welcomed their first child or faced a challenge together, they would remember Yates and Sophia and be inspired to hold on just a little bit tighter, to love just a little bit deeper, to build something that would last. Because that was what mattered in the end. Not the wealth accumulated or the land owned or the status achieved, but the love shared and the family nurtured and the example set. Yates had pulled Sophia out of the quicksand that day in 1906, but in doing so, he had set both their lives on a course towards something extraordinary. They had saved each other in the most profound way possible, and the ripples of that salvation continued to spread through generations, a testament to the power of love to transform and transcend and endure forever.